Today, I'm ranking the internet's most popular decluttering tips and hacks, so hopefully you can find some new ones to try, skip those that aren't going to help so much. Some of these are super helpful, some are super overrated. And before we dive in, I really need you to understand how I'm ranking these. These are tips and hacks meant to stand alone. None of these are a complete system, and none of these are going to solve your entire clutter problem, so I'm ranking them based on how they do in their own right. Now let's talk about our ranking scale for these. S tier is the top tier, surprisingly helpful hacks. A tier is rock solid. B tier is gonna work for some. I'd definitely try these, but with some more caveats. C, still pretty good, but sometimes a little bit more effort than it's worth. D is often gonna be more effort than it's worth. And F is really, I just skip these. The first one, I see this all the time, and it's the 10-minute timer, and it's exactly what it sounds like. You literally set a timer for 10 minutes, go around the house with a declutter box and a trash bag, and declutter as much as you possibly can in 10 minutes. Now, this one, I cannot see any potential downsides, and if used consistently, it can really transform your space, and there's such a low barrier to entry, and you can do this even if you're not motivated because it's only 10 minutes. So I'd say this one is definitely an A tier. Next, we have the advice that says to pull everything out first. The idea here is literally what it says. You pull everything out of the space so you can get a better sense of what that space does. It kind of forces you to touch every single item and make a decision on it. However, on the flip side here, what ends up happening a lot of times is that people pull out way more than they can ever deal with in a reasonable amount of time, and it actually makes the problem worse because now you've got like an entire huge closet all over your bedroom. You can't get it done. You shove the piles into corners, and it makes the problem worse. So I would actually give this one an F. If you want to try it though, a modified version is to do this on a much smaller scale. One drawer, one shelf, an amount you know you can tackle in the time that you have. Next, we have give every item a home, where you make sure that each and every item that you own has a very clear and defined home where that item goes. This one, honestly, it's some of the most rock solid decluttering advice that I think is out there because this gets at the root of why clutter builds. We often think it's because we're just too lazy to go forth the physical effort to pick something up and put it away. 90% of the time, it's not that at all. It's because we don't have the mental energy to make decisions and figure out where it goes. So I would definitely put this solidly in the S tier. Declutter one item a day is probably among some of the most popular decluttering advice out there, where just every single day you choose one item to declutter. I like that this is very simple, very low barrier to entry, very easy to do. On the flip side, it's going to take you a pretty good while, perhaps even years, to see real progress, especially if you have a lot of clutter. And it's also very personality dependent. If you are someone like myself who is more an all-at-once kind of person and wants to really go all in on a project, this is going to feel very frustrating and slow to you. It can also, while again, pretty easy to do, it can also feel exhausting to try to do something every single day, and it only really makes a big difference if you keep up with it for years on end. So it's good and it'll layer onto anything else. So I would put this in the B tier. Next, ask, would I buy this again? So asking yourself this question when you're trying to decide whether to let an item go or keep it can be really helpful because it cuts through a lot of that guilt and that, well, I spent money on this, I have it. And a lot of times we can start to feel like getting rid of it is admitting that we made a mistake in purchasing it. But here's the thing, even if you did make a mistake in purchasing it, that is done. You can't go back and fix it. So holding on to it and creating more clutter isn't going to help anything. So I actually think this question is one of my favorite questions to ask about each item, and I would put this solidly in S tier. Next, just do a massive weekend declutter. This one sounds really appealing because you can just knock it all out at once and schedule this weekend to do all your decluttering, and by next week, you'll have a new home. The problem with this is, number one, For many of us, we have enough clutter that one weekend isn't going to take care of it. So you're going to have to do several weekends. A lot of us struggle to find enough time to actually set aside a whole weekend to do this. And this is very personality dependent. So I have found, at least from my followers, that roughly 75% are the type that thrive at doing a little at a time, and 25%, I am in that 25%, prefer to batch things all at once. So it's not terrible idea to know which type you are, but again, as a whole, I'm gonna put this one in the D tier. Next, we have the 12-12-12 challenge. That's where you find 12 things to toss, 12 things to donate, and 12 things to put away. I like this one because it's fun, it's motivating, there's not a really difficult barrier to start, it just kind of gamifies the whole thing. At the same time, the novelty of this, let me tell you, can wear off quickly, and it's gonna be a little bit less motivating, and it's a little bit tricky sometimes. You almost sometimes feel like if you find number 13 to donate, that doesn't count, like you're really trying hard to find another one to trash or something like that. So I would put this in the B tier. Next, we have the container principle. And that is where you use the concept that the container is literally meant to contain. That means once the container of an item is full, then you don't go get another container or shove it somewhere around the container. It is now full, and you either have to stop bringing new items in, or you have to get rid of the worst of the items to put new ones in. So if you have a container of craft supplies, for example, and then you say you have paints and you get new paints, they don't fit in, you either have to stop getting new ones, or you have to say, these ones are really old, I don't love them, I'm getting rid of these and putting new ones in. This is a great concept with, I can see almost no downsides to this. I suppose unless you used it somewhere that doesn't really need to be contained, but for the most part, this is fantastic. A good rule of thumb, allows a lot of flexibility, and I also like that if you get rid of the worst of it, you're actually constantly elevating the quality of what you have. So I put this one in the S tier. Next, we have the rule that if you haven't used an item in a year, you need to toss it. So this is going to help you decide what to keep and what to get rid of. This is pretty simple and straightforward, so I like that. However, it can become really difficult. First of all, have I used it in a year? I'm not really sure. And so sometimes I get caught up in the thought loop of whether or not I've used it. And it can be a little bit unfair to things like some seasonal items. Like what if you do use it every year, but for some reason last year was an unusual year and you didn't? Or sentimental items. There are some of these that I do want to keep, like my daughter is coming home from the hospital outfit, for example. Have I used that in a year? No, I haven't used it. She's 11. I haven't used it in 11 years, but I still want to keep it. And some backup items can get a little bit unfairly treated here because I know that I am going to use, for example, packing tape in the next 5 years. It doesn't take up a lot of space, so it's okay to keep the extra one. So this one is an okay thing to consider. It's just relatively incomplete and can cause a lot of overthinking if you take it too seriously. So I'd put this one in the C tier. Next, we have the famous question, does this spark joy? Also called the KonMari method. It was from the book many years ago, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, which I'm telling you was all the rage. And there's some good principles. So the idea is that each item you pick up and the main question you're going to ask is, does this spark joy? I like the question because it's a little bit different and it gets to the heart of the matter. Like, you don't have to have some great practical reason for keeping it or getting rid of it. Like, do you just really love it? Does it spark joy? You shouldn't be keeping a bunch of stuff that doesn't spark joy. However, where it falls apart is for someone like myself who is very logical, it can be a little bit too subjective. A lot of us aren't really very good about telling what does spark joy, and so we end up keeping way too much stuff, and then it only works for a few items. For some items it really breaks down. The classic example of, like, does my toilet bowl cleaning brush spark joy? No, not really. I don't feel any joy when I see it, but should I declutter it? Surely not. I mean, I guess I could say that having a clean bathroom sparks joy, but again, it just gets it kind of breaks down a little bit. And so this isn't my favorite question. It's not a bad thing to consider. So I would put this in the C tier. Another popular concept is called Swedish death cleaning. There's actually an entire book by this name or very similar name, which I have read. And the idea here is that you look at all your stuff, no matter what age you currently are, through the lens of what is going to happen to this when I'm gone, because something is going to happen to it. And so if you think about it in that way, it helps you to be able to really make decisions. Because when I look at, say, my sentimental papers from when I was in grade school, it's really hard to decide, like, do I want these? Do I not? But if I think, okay, what is going to happen to these when I pass on? If I have this whole tub of work from grade school, what are my kids going to do? If they are just going to trash it or it's going to add more burden to them, then by all means, it's much easier for me to let go of or really pare down to a way that's meaningful for them. So that's the basic concept. And I actually think this is fantastic advice. I think about this all the time now when especially for sentimental stuff, and it really helps me to picture what is actually ultimately going to happen to this, and it really helps me make better decisions. So I would put this solidly in the A tier. Next hack is to create a halfway house for undecided items. So you take a box or something, and if there's something you really can't decide on, you put it in there, and then you keep it for a predefined amount of time. And the idea is if you haven't gone to retrieve it, you can probably just let it go. Now, the advantage here is sometimes we just struggle to decide about an item, and we just can't quite let it go, but we don't want to keep it. So it gives us something else to do with it. And a lot of times, 95% of the items we'll never think about again for the next year. And then we can just go ahead and donate it, and then we feel less worried about it. On the flip side, this can be a little bit of a cop-out. So if I feel like this option is available to me, I sometimes will put way too much in there. Anytime something is a little hard to decide, we put it in there, and then we can end up with like 12 boxes here. So if you're gonna use this one, make sure you're only using it when you really, really have to and you really can't let it go. So I would put this one in the C tier. The next one is to follow the one in, one out rule. So anytime you bring an item in, you have to get rid of one of that item. This is very commonly done, especially for clothing. If I bring a dress in, I have to get rid of a dress or things like that. This one is really, really good for maintenance because it helps you to think about what you're purchasing. If I know if I buy a dress that I'm gonna have to get rid of one, I'm like, ooh, do I really like this one better? It helps you be more thoughtful about purchases, and it helps ensure that everything stays pared down. I totally do this in my closet. This one is great for maintenance. It may not be as helpful for if you have a lot of clutter right now and you need to get decluttered, but I would put this one in the A tier. Next hack is to declutter by category of item instead of by room. This is something that The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo advocates for strongly. And there are some pros and cons to this. The pros are that you can see all of what you have in a category. So for example, if you have books in like 6 different rooms in the house, it's going to be a little bit harder to make better decisions when you're not really seeing the whole collection at once. However, the cons are this can be strategically really difficult to go gather up, especially if you're starting with a lot of clutter. It can also take a little bit more time. And I find if this is all you're doing is trying to go by category, you feel like you're not making a lot of progress because you're not sticking in one room or one space and seeing the progress there. So I think there is a place for this, but I think it's pretty limited. So I'd put this one in the B tier. Next up is the idea of a capsule wardrobe or a 10-item wardrobe. Maybe it's not totally fair of me to lump these together. They're not the same, but they're a similar idea. The capsule wardrobe is just that you have a wardrobe where everything kind of mixes and matches, fits together well, and is very thoughtfully curated. There's not necessarily a set number of items. And then the 10-item wardrobe is an idea that was made very popular by the Daily Connoisseur. I love her content. And I'll link to one of her videos below where she talks about this, but basically you literally give yourself like a 10-item limit for your core wardrobe items for the season. So she rotates it every 3 months. And this can be helpful for those who really like rules and constraints. They can force you to be more creative. They can force you to wear what you have better. but it can also become stressful if you're not sure what to put together, if you feel a lot of pressure like, oh no, I can't wear this, or if rules stress you out. You know, if you're doing the 10-item wardrobe and you're like, well, am I allowed to have these workout pants? Do they count? Do they not? What about a jean jacket? Is that part of the wardrobe or not? So it can work really well, but it can also cause more stress than is necessary. So I would put this in the C tier. The next hack is to turn all of your hangers around facing like the wrong direction. And then every time you wear something, you put the hanger back the normal way. And this way you're gonna be able to see what you wear. So maybe you do this today, and then in 3 months, you go and look at which hangers are still facing the wrong direction. And those are things that would be a strong candidate to be decluttered. This is pretty solid advice. It might be a little bit of a pain to do in the first place, but it really helps to see what you're actually wearing. And so I would put this one in the A tier. Next, we have the $10 10-minute rule, or sometimes you could adjust it to the $20 20-minute rule. But the idea here is if you're looking at an item and you could replace this item in under $10 in less than 10 minutes, it's okay to let it go. I like this because it gives very concrete thinking. It's pretty easy to think through the scenario. So let's say that I have like just way too much of something like tape or sticky notes. And, you know, if I have a roll of tape, I could easily replace that for less than $10 and in less than 10 minutes. I could run to the store, I could order it on Amazon. So this really helps you let go of those practical things that you just have too much of. The caveat here is I would say that sometimes it's a little bit too harsh on keeping backups. So if I have, let's say, 22 rolls of Scotch tape, we'll use that for sure during the next 3 years, maybe during the next year. I have 2 kids. What is it about kids and Scotch tape? I have no idea. But if I have the space and I know where it is, I think it's fine to keep it. But if I'm struggling, if I'm kind of feeling like maybe I shouldn't keep it, or I'm struggling on space, this is a great question, and I would put this in the A tier. Next, we see all over the place low buy or no buy challenges. This is where you take a specific amount of time and you challenge yourself to either buy very little or buy nothing. I will say, I've watched some of these. When they say buy nothing, they don't literally mean that they are buying absolutely nothing, like they're going a year and they're not even buying a morsel of food. They're basically defining certain categories as like necessities, and they're not buying anything outside of this. And you could also apply this more specifically, like, for example, if you have way too many clothes, I am not buying any more clothes for this period of time. I actually see almost no downside to these because a lot of times our clutter problem is what is coming in, and no matter how good you are at letting go of things, if things are coming in at the same or a higher rate, you're not going to make progress. So even in stopping and thinking, and even if you don't follow it perfectly, maybe you decided you weren't going to buy any clothes, but you bought one thing over the next 6 months, you're still doing a lot better. So the main challenge I see with this would be if you were to just way overthink the rules and get really stressed about what's a necessity and what's not. But overall, I put this in the S tier. Another hack or tool is Declutter with Me videos. That is where you actually are watching someone else declutter, and that is supposed to help you declutter. Now, there's a few different styles of these. You can just watch people declutter their space. Sometimes you just see it transform. Sometimes they're talking through, they're picking up each item, explaining their reasoning. There's also a style like we do every week in the Insiders where we do our 10-minute quick wins. So I actually put up a timer. You don't actually see me on the screen. I give you a specific task and you go do it. Anything like this is so helpful. Some people actually call it body doubling. This is, I think, an ADHD concept, but that's where you know that someone else is doing it and it psychologically really helps you to do it. It also is so inspirational. Like, it's really hard to watch these and not get some of the principles in your head. I mean, even watching this video, you're probably gonna, even if you didn't try that hard, you're probably gonna go away and subconsciously apply some of these concepts. It's going to motivate you to think about, oh yeah, I know I have like 5 can openers. Let me get rid of 3 or 4 of those. So there's really not a lot of downside to this, and there's really only upside. I also find it really encouraging while I'm decluttering to watch someone else declutter because it can just get really boring and old. So I'd put these in the S tier. Next, ask this question: would I keep this if I were moving soon? Of all of the decluttering questions, this is one of my favorite. I have moved many times, and when you move and you're decluttering before the move, you absolutely don't want to be moving things that you don't need. It's just a pain. So there's nothing more motivational than a move to get things decluttered. So why can't I keep things that clutter-free even if I'm not moving? So I will ask, if I was going to be moving soon, would it be worth keeping this item? And if not, it can go. I'd put this question in the S tier. So here's the takeaway. None of these are truly bad, and some of them are really helpful, but none of them are a full solution either. And if you feel like you've tried a lot of these hacks and you're still kind of spinning your wheels and not making a lot of progress, it's not you. You need a complete system with support, and that is exactly why I have created Declutter University, to give you just that, and you are just in time because it's going to be on sale really soon. So click the link below for all the details.